Okay, it's 2:01. We're getting started early today. So once again, welcome to Connecting SOMO. My name is Crystal Owens. I'm the Startup Program Director at codefi. And today we are talking about the legislative recap and what that means for Southern Missouri. So if you are joining or as you are joining, please introduce yourself in the chat. Tell us your name, contact info, the organization you work for. And also, we're trying to spread the love with some resource sharing. So you might consider putting something in the chat like what you can offer as a resource or something that you might need, something you're looking for. So we can help the community grow during these 30 minutes every month. We also have a special guest today, Ryan DeBoef. He is the senior partner at Hahn DeBoef. And Ryan, if you want to give everyone a wave here while I read your bio, Ryan brings over a decade of public sector experience, including roles as legal counsel and chief of staff at Missouri State University. He has led government relations and helped manage system-wide operations. Since joining the firm in 2022, he's expanded his work across diverse industries, leveraging strong statewide relationships. So we're super excited to have Ryan here today. He brings all the knowledge with everything going on legislatively, and he is an advocate, and that includes agency engagement, team management, and strategic execution. So welcome, Ryan. Today, we're going to do just a couple of quick announcements, and then I'm fully going to hand over the mic to Ryan so he can talk to us about today's topic. So I just wanted to share, we a couple of weeks ago had the inaugural Invest SOMO event. We had 16 tech startups pitch for pre-seed and seed capital. And it was a really fruitful day with lots of exciting happenings and conversations. We brought together regional investors from across the state who were able to lend their time and their ears and their feedback. So we're super excited to have planted that seed and talk more about what's to come. So stay tuned for the funding announcements coming out of that. As a reminder, Traction Studio AI, which is a platform that codefi is working on, is something that you can put your name on the wait list for. It's an amazing platform to really accelerate ideation all the way through investment for tech startups. So you don't want to miss out on that. And there will be some links in the chat you can follow along with that one. Also, the Missouri Small Business Development Center has early stage business boot camps coming up. So you'll definitely want to sign up for those. And our next Connecting SOMO webinar is going to be on Tuesday, August 13th at 2 p.m. And the SBDC is going to be chatting about the Elevate program. So there are certain criteria that you're a good fit for that program. I believe it's 50 to 100 employees, and you can find more information. We'll have that link in the chat as well. And one last note, if you are new here, you might be asking, like, what is Innovate SOMO? How did I land here? Innovate SOMO is the joint organization between codefi and the eFactory. Way back in the day, codefi was on the southeast side of the state, eFactory was here on the southwest side. And we came together and said, how can we bridge the gap between these lower 47 counties of Missouri and bring resources for further economic development to this part of the region. And that is how Innovate SOMO was born. So we can go ahead and kick off our topic today. And Ryan, I'm gonna hand the reins over to you.
Very good. Thank you guys for giving me the opportunity to talk to you today. I'm going to give you an overall legislative update with a focus on the innovation community. I know it's a very uncertain, I can't remember, Nikki, exactly what the words I used at the beginning, but it's an uncertain and difficult time for the innovation community with regard to government relations. So load up questions as we're going through. Feel free to drop them in the chat or save them to the end or interrupt me if you need to. But we will talk about overall what happened this legislative session in Jefferson City And if you pay real close attention, particularly in the middle of the presentation, I'll talk very specifically about what happened with regard to budgetary issues for the innovation community. So with that, I will share my slides. Oh, just one sec. I will now share my slides, and we will do a slideshow from the beginning. There we go. Okay. That's us. That's what we're here to talk about today, 2025 Missouri legislative session. This is my team I work with. So before you ask kind of like, why are you talking to us, Ryan? Our firm represents Codify, and we also represent Missouri State University, including the E-Factory and JVIC and all of their economic development operations. So we don't necessarily directly represent Innovate SOMO, but we do represent two of the large stakeholders in Innovate SOMO. And I, of course, have interacted with several of you on this meeting in the past. Our firm also represents a wide variety of clients across all kinds of industries. So we keep a finger on the pulse of the entire legislature on all issues in the legislature. And a lot of our clients, particularly the ones that I am the primary client contact for, have some form of connection to Southern Missouri. So you might find that the northern half of the state of Missouri has a much more established lobbying presence than the southern part of the state of Missouri does. We like to think of ourselves as specialists in the southern part of Missouri, so we understand the issues that you all face very well. You can see on this slide my business partner, Jay Hahn. I split my time between Jefferson City and Springfield, Missouri. And Jay, on the other hand, lives full-time in Jefferson City. So we kind of have a really good setup where I always say it's amazing how many relationships Jay has because he was at, the staffer we're trying to reach in some state agency. He was at their house for a kid's birthday party last weekend and things like that. So Jay has a lot of really good mid-Missouri relationships throughout the executive branch of the state. And then, of course, I, splitting my time between Springfield and Jefferson City, have a broad set of relationships, both with elected officials and with others throughout the southern part of the state. Andy Foley is our budget specialist. He sits in every budget hearing in the Capitol all day, every day. So that is a very big job. And then Jessica is our director of operations. She keeps the three of us headed on the right path. So Jessica, if you interact with our office, a lot of times Jessica will be the person who will make sure we connect at the right time and in the right place. A lot of people ask, what does it mean? What do you really do? So here's just a quick overview. Like people know we talk to the legislature on policy bills and on budget matters. A lot of times people interact with us because they want to get started on a budget matter, but we end up interacting on a lot of policy issues as well. And then one area I think that often gets overlooked, we work a lot with the executive branch. So with the various agencies, as we're encountering problems in a particular agency, a lot of times we can get involved and kind of get things escalated to the top of the agency or even to the governor's office to get issues resolved. All right, with that set up, what happened this year? So the 2025 legislative session, over 2,600 bills were filed, and they passed 67 of those. I always say there's not 2,600 good ideas out there, right? So we don't want all these bills to pass. I will tell you, though, for the past several years, it has become really, really difficult to get bills passed through the legislature. This year, we saw much more activity than we have in years past. They passed 51 policy bills and 16 appropriations bills. The appropriations bills, they kind of have to pass every year, but the policy bills, they do not. Last year, they only passed 28 policy bills due to a lot of dysfunction in the Senate. So this year felt like a lot more productivity. This next slide will show you kind of the trend here. So used to be they passed like 200 bills during legislative session. Now they had a really good year by passing 51. But I will tell you, there is more to that story. If we look at the length of those bills, they used to pass much shorter bills, and now they pass longer bills. So, what that tells us is that the legislative process has changed dramatically over the past several years. It used to be much more like the after school special you guys are accustomed to, where, I'm a bill and I get assigned to a committee and people testify and then I work through the committee. Now, what we do is we pass a small number of those standalone bills, but we amend all kinds of things onto those bills. So I am agnostic on whether that is the right or the wrong way to do that. It just is the way we do it now. So instead of it does change the way we interact with the process. It's become much harder to sit back and wait for your policy idea to get a hearing and start moving through that. A lot of times that process may or may not happen, but we're at the very end of legislative session trying to amend things onto bills and then also playing defense to watch for bad things being amended onto bills at the 11th hour. It's become much more difficult to monitor the policy process without having feet on the ground in the Capitol all the time with their ear down on the rail to find out what's happening next. All right, something similar has happened with regard to the budget. So you go back 25 years ago and we passed under 400 pages of budget bills. Now the budget has gotten to be over 600 pages long, and it seems to get a little longer every year. And there is some truth to the fact that part of the reason for that is because there's more money in the budget than there used to be. But really, the amount of dollars in the budget don't make the budget longer. What makes the budget longer is that the legislature is designating through the budget much more specificity with regard to what projects and programs they want to fund. So it used to be the budget process largely involved the legislature sending money to various executive agencies for the executive agencies to decide through some form of competitive process or something like that exactly what to do with the money, which programs and which projects to fund. Now the legislators want more control over that process. So the budget gets longer because we're seeing more language in the budget and more line items in the budget designating exactly what programs and what projects we're funding. We are seeing that play out with regard to the innovation community right now. So as you guys know all too well, traditionally, the way we have funded innovation centers is through the MTC. So the governor's recommendations this year included $8.5 million in funding for the MTC. The House went along with that. There was some action by some of the legislators in the House to try to fund specific programs instead of or in place of or in addition to MTC, but that largely fell short in the House. So the House ended up coming up with their budget proposal that included $10.5 million for MTC. What was the extra 2 million for? We don't exactly know. We know there had been some conversations between leadership in the House and MTC about some form of project. I'm not, but the details were largely kept kind of close to the vest on what they talked about in that regard. But that ended up with an extra 2 million in one time. So then the Senate got a hold of the budget and they said, we don't want to fund innovation centers through MTC. We want to fund specific innovation centers instead. Like I said, this has been a phenomenon all across the budget over the last several years. So they included some specific funding for 5 different innovation centers. The budget then went to what we call conference, where the House and the Senate reconcile their differences. And what came out of conference was $0 for MTC, and then they funded 4 of the 5 innovation centers. For those of you that are very in touch with this process, you know that Senator Lincoln Hough from Springfield chairs the Senate Appropriations Committee, and Senator Lincoln Hough has a lot of say-so over the way appropriations end up in the budget. It's my understanding, based on conversations with Senator Huff, he got pushed pretty hard to reduce the dollar figure that was going into these programs. And as opposed to giving up somebody else's program, he gave up his own, with the idea being he could come back in a capital bill later in the process to fund the 4 million for Innovate SOMO. That I would tell you is exactly what he did. He zeroed out Innovate SOMO in this part of the budget, and then he tried to put $4 million into House Bill 19 to make up for pulling the 4 million out of here. Unfortunately, and we'll see this later in slides, House Bill 19 was a capital bill, and it died an unexpected death in the legislature when the Senate passed it on the deadline for the budget bills to be passed, and the House decided not to bring the bill up at all. So the TAFP budget, we call it, that's for truly agreed and finally passed budget, included no funding for MTC, no funding for Innovate SOMO, but it did include funding for 4 other innovation centers or collaboratives in the state. So that was not the end of the story, though, because last week, I think I might, or was it 2 weeks ago, a week and a half ago at this point, Governor Kehoe released his final version of the budget, including line item vetoes. And he line item vetoed 2 more of the innovation centers completely out of the budget, and then cut one down to about half, such that we only ended up with $2.35 million for innovation centers in the budget, spread across Launch KC and St. Louis Manufacturing and Innovation Center. So there is, and a lot of people have asked, how did this happen? Why did this happen? So there is, for those of you that, I'm sure all of you are very well in touch with this, there is kind of a battle going on right now over whether we should be funding innovation centers through MTC or through a different avenue. And reasonable minds can differ on what the right way to do it is. But what you have is you have several legislators who have said we are dissatisfied with the way funding is working through MTC right now. Meanwhile, you have others saying we want to maybe reform MTC, make some changes at MTC to clean up some of the problems, but we want to continue funding these innovation centers through MTC. You couple that battle going on right now with a lot of the concerns at the state level about running out of money, and the result was what you see on this screen, which was a dramatic and very unfortunate reduction in appropriations for innovation centers. Let me pause there before I go on. Does anybody have questions about that? All right, I will. Well, let's look. We got some stuff in the chat here. Let me look at those.
It looks like Chris Hunter is asking, overall, was there a net loss?
Overall, there was definitely a net loss. So the 8.5 million would have been flat. Now, I will tell you that 8.5 million is not all designated for innovation centers. So it goes to MTC, and then MTC is deciding what to do with that money. I do not have the dollar figures in specific about what then flowed out through competitive process to fund innovation center operations, but I do not believe it was that full $8.5 million because, of course, MTC also invests funds into startup companies. MTC also operates with some of their own money because as they invest money into startup companies, then they receive a return from time to time on that money. So they have a fund balance that they work with as well. Definitely, though, if somebody on here wants to correct me on this, I would take the correction. But I think 2.35 million is significantly less than MTC was using through competitive processes to fund innovation center operations last year. Moreover, it only goes to two different entities now, as opposed to it being a pool of funds that various people can compete over. Now, I will tell you the problems with MTC are real, right? I mean, they're not coming from nowhere. There is grave concern over the speed with which the resources are allocated and a lot of the processes they're using to get that money out there. Um, there are a lot of conversations going on right now about whether there's a different way we can fund innovation centers, possibly through an Office of Entrepreneurship at the Missouri Department of Economic Development. I know a lot of folks connected to Innovate SOMO are actively engaged in conversations with both the governor's office and the Department of Economic Development about those opportunities. I think look for something to change on this. I don't, again, reasonable minds can differ whether there is a commitment at the state level to funding innovation centers. I think there is. I think people want to see innovation centers funded. The problem is we're kind of in the middle of this battle over what the right way to do it right now is. Um, in some ways, this isn't what anybody wants to hear as they're trying to figure out how do I survive the economic turmoil of this. But there is when there's a reduction like this, it puts pressure on the state to figure out a solution. So that's the good news. I mean, there've been a lot of rumblings about the MTC situation, but this budget that passed definitely kind of forces the issue to the forefront. We're gonna have to figure something out if we think it's important, particularly in rural communities, to have access to the basic business services needed for somebody to start a business. All right, I will. We got a couple more.
Those are just AI
Okay,
summaries.
good. It throws me
Press
off,
on.
the AI summaries.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll keep rolling here, and we'll have a little time here at the end to keep going. Okay, what else happened when we're not talking budget? So we've been working on several, the main thing I would say the innovation community has been working on with regard to policy bills is an angel investor tax credit. Tax credits have taken a turn at the state level. They've become less popular than they once were. So we continue to work toward trying to pass an angel investor tax credit comparable to what some of the states surrounding Missouri have, but did not make it across the finish line this year. Like not really a similar tax credit package, but something that fits in the same bucket is the Main Street tax credits. So that is being largely driven by the real estate community in St. Louis to create a tax credit to renovate some of the buildings in downtown St. Louis. We also did not pass child care tax credits this year. And then there's an effort by the House in particular to reform tax credits by putting sunsets or expiration dates on all of them and bringing them all subject to appropriations. None of that stuff has happened. There's kind of a stalemate right now on a lot of these tax credits. What did they pass? So they did pass some small changes to some of the charitable tax credits out there. Those are very different from the economic development oriented tax credits. They increased the Youth Opportunity Program tax credit to 70% and a tax credit for CASAs. And then they created a new tax credit package for adoptions and extended the diaper bank tax credit. They did some other work there. You can see some that's particularly geared towards training. So they are allowing proprietary schools to not have to comply with a set of requirements when they're doing registered apprenticeships and pre-apprenticeships. And they did pass a career tech certificate program. So that is designed to be A plus like for those in the higher ed community. So, but for non-degree credentials, so for short-term credentials. We will see over the next year how the Department of Higher Education and Workforce Development wants to implement that. And then one of the big headliners, and we learned yesterday the governor is for sure going to sign this bill, would eliminate state income taxes on capital gains. So that is a big change for the business community. Here's some in generals what passed. So they passed several omnibus bills. They did repeal the mandatory paid sick leave provisions that were on the ballot previously. That is another war that will continue, right? And there's already petitions being filed with the state to put it back on the ballot to try to go for a constitutional change. The governor's going to sign that bill Thursday. And then the General Assembly repealed or is putting the constitutional amendment for abortion back on the ballot. They placed St. Louis police under state control, and they did some small tweaks with regard to initiative petition reform, but they did not do the big initiative petition reform. So that is, we keep changing the Constitution and adding things that don't feel like they belong in the Constitution in there. And we have not resolved that issue yet. I'm going to scroll through this in the interest of time. So a lot of you would have followed that there was a special session. They were successful, and the governor has already signed the bills that were part of that special session. The big headlines from that are that we extended an incentive to the Royals and Chiefs to help publicly finance a portion of their sports stadiums. We did pass a big capital bill as part of that, but it did not include any of the funding for Innovate SOMO or for some of the other kind of smaller projects that were in the capital bill that was during legislative session. And then one of the other things you'll be hearing about, local governments are struggling to wrap their head around why some caps were placed on residential property taxes, and understandably so. I mean, that's a pretty big departure from the way things have worked before now. All right, never too soon to think about elections. So here's some of what we're going to see after we complete the next legislative session. Alex Riley will run for Speaker. He's a Southwest Missouri guy. Dirk Deaton is the chair of the House Budget Committee. He's termed out. So we will hopefully be seeing Alex Riley ascend to Speaker from Southern Missouri. Don't know what the future holds with regard to the House Budget Committee. Likewise, on the Senate side, Senator Lincoln Huff is a Southwest Missouri guy. He is termed out. Senator Rusty Black is not a Southern Missouri guy. He is a very good legislator from Northwest Missouri. He is rural. He taught agriculture classes in high school before he retired from that. He is likely to ascend to the appropriations chair in the Senate. There's some dates of interest for anyone interested. I would tell you I send out during legislative session a weekly update. When the legislature is not in session, I just kind of send it when there's something to report on. But if you want added to that list, my contact info is on the screen. Shoot me an email and I will just add you to it's just a MailChimp newsletter that goes out, and I am happy to include you on the distribution list for that. With that, I think I'm down to 1 minute left, but I am happy to answer any questions people have.
Osby just put something in the chat. It says, will the small business incubator tax credit program be on the chopping block?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think I don't think anything is currently viewed as on the chopping block. I think the question becomes, are you going to be is it going to be subject to appropriations going forward? That has been a concept that the House has liked and the Senate thus far has not liked. So right now, I would say there are conversations about all tax credits. I think feel good about tax credits that are already on the books. I don't think anybody's talking about violently yanking them away all at once. The question will be, do they put an expiration date on it such that you'd have to get them reauthorized? And do they become subject to appropriation such that if the state fell on extremely hard financial times, would they start throttling them down slowly? But again, that's something the House has liked the idea of, but thus far the Senate has not had much interest in doing.
Any other questions?
Very good. Please feel free. Don't feel like you're bothering me. If you want to email me or shoot me a text, I had my info up there, or Crystal can get it to you if you want to follow up at some point. And thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk to you guys today.
Thank you, Ryan. We appreciate your time, and thanks everyone for being here. As a reminder and correction, the next Connecting SOMO is on Tuesday, August 12th as normally scheduled. We will see you then. Spread the word and bring a colleague next time. Thanks, everyone.